Fellow humans, today I bring you my review of Xenoblade 2. Now first off, I should start by saying that I have a bit of a history with this series. I am something of a veteran of Tetsuya Takahashi's work. Now before you start, I have not had the fortune of playing Xenogears yet. My history with the series goes to the PS2 era with Xenosaga, starting with episode 2. I was a kid at the time and I had only played Final Fantasy IV at the time, so my experience with JRPGs was pretty limited. I absolutely loved the game, so naturally, I moved on to the other two episodes as well. Episode 2 is kind of written off as the black sheep in the franchise, but I still love it, especially since replaying it about 2 years ago. Fast forward today, we now have the Xenoblade series, and I finally have the console to play it. After hitting a bit of a wall, I gave this game a break and moved on to other things for a little while. But then I came back, and man am I glad I did. 2017 had quite a few underrated gems, but Xenoblade 2 is 2017's true underdog. I even made a crack against the 2018 Game Awards not too long ago for completely forgetting about the game. I mean, Ni no Kuni 2 is a decent enough game, but it hardly warrants a spot in a world where this game exists. Man, I really need to stop getting worked up about the Game Awards. So the main premise of the game is that you are a run-of-the-mill scavenger chosen to take a blade known as the Aegis to a place called Elysium. Your starting allies in the game turn on you, and it's a pretty wild ride from there, forging unlikely alliances every which way. I should say that the lore in this game is incredibly fascinating. I love the dynamic between humans and blades, who act as their means of battle. Some folks see their blades as pets, while many others look at them as partners. It's a concept that is further explored the more you progress through the story. It doesn't hurt that the lore is actually bolstered by competent storytelling and characters. That's my biggest gripe with every Zelda game, is that each one has such great lore, but it's let down by a piss-poor narrative. The same goes for Final Fantasy XIII, actually. Now, video game stories are a dime a dozen to me, so I generally don't hold my breath for them. But even if Xenoblade 2's narrative doesn't have the existential themes of Nier Automata, I still loved every second of it. The characters in this game gave me that same feel-good vibe that Final Fantasy IX gave me. I thought that the banter between battles would get tiresome, but they actually ended up growing on me. It's also helped by the game's numerous heart-to-heart cutscenes, where characters and blades will exchange some words outside of the main story. Besides offering entertaining conversations, these little interactions can unlock any number of things, from new abilities to additional side quests, of which there are many. Now, there are times when the writing can get bogged down by some awkward or even tone-deaf moments. Play the game and you'll know what I'm talking about. It's not too frequent, but it does kind of break the immersion. The further I got into this game, the more my mind completely caved in on itself. The main campaign alone clocked in at 70 hours. Remember, this is a game on the Nintendo Switch. The amount and variety of content on offer here is beyond staggering. Hell, some journalists have even criticizing it for being too long. It could stand toe-to-toe with many AAA games for the PS4 and the Xbox One. I think the best part of this is that I didn't even have to install the game, at least last I remember. It's become one of my favorite things about the Nintendo Switch and its games. They're not concerned with comparing dick sizes with Sony and Microsoft. Sure, their games may look pretty, but worthwhile exclusives on those consoles, at least to me, are incredibly slim pickings. People give Microsoft a hard time for lacking compelling exclusives, saying that Sony won this generation. While it is true that Sony does have the better lineup than Microsoft, that's really not saying much. I can count on my hand 2 games that are worth a look on the PS4, but that hardly justifies spending $400 on an entire console. If you ask me, even the upcoming exclusives look pretty pathetic. But hey, what do I know? My point here is that developers need to stop getting their panties in a wad over graphics and actually focus on what makes games fun. Now, right off the bat, this is definitely one of those RPGs that really takes its time to get going. My hatred for this trope cannot be adequately expressed by words alone. I played the first Valkyrie profile only a few months ago, and that game has the same bullshit, which was thankfully remedied by the second game. It's a trend that stunk up the Zelda games too. I bought the game so that I could play a game, not watch a movie. Sorry, the little kid in me came out. The lengthy tutorial, though, I do get. There is a lot going on in this game. This may be a personal point, but I felt like the tutorial dogpiled so much information at once. I really only ended up learning these things organically during gameplay, which is how I prefer to learn how to play my games anyway. So by this point, you're probably wondering how the hell this game even plays. The gameplay here is very different from other JRPGs for sure. Since this is my first Xenoblade game, I can't really compare it to previous entries. I can only tell you what it's like from a newcomer's perspective. You have blades who, like I said, serve as your means of combat, giving you an assortment of abilities to use, each with their own warm-up gauge. Your characters attack automatically, filling up 3 gauges, and you can actually maximize their corresponding abilities if you activate it right as you land your last hit. As you land your other abilities, an additional gauge for your special attacks fills up, allowing you to use special attacks in a given cycle. Now, footage for the Final Fantasy remake just came out, and the combat is an action hack and slash with a gauge that fills up as the battle ranges on, enabling you to activate special abilities. This is ironic to me on a level you don't even know. If you don't already know the story behind Final Fantasy VII, the original idea was shot down due to being too dark and heavy for a mainstream audience, and that concept became what we know today as Xenogears. 20 years later, it seems as if the remake is aping the Xeno series, and that is fucking priceless to me. I'm not even making cracks against the Final Fantasy VII remake. That actually sold me on a game that I didn't initially have a whole lot of investment in. Anyway, if your allies have the right element, they can land an additional special attack. And after landing 3 of these in a combo, you can actually seal off an enemy's ability, which can be a godsend for certain foes. You can equip up to 3 blades for battle, and you can't just switch to them whenever you want. You will need to wait for their warm-up gauges to fill up before calling on them. It forces you to strategize switching between your blades. You really want to make them count. Thankfully, when you do, you can use their other abilities right out of the gate. Let's say, for example, your party is low on health, and your healer blade is ready to go. You can cancel your attack, summon them, and use their healing abilities in a pinch. Another major component of battle is the party gauge. This has 3 uses, one of which I won't go into for spoiler reasons. Its most frequent use is going to be to revive your KO'd allies. Since you don't use items in battle like you would in most traditional RPGs, this will be your savior. And the second use is for chain attack combos, which can deal minimal or decuman levels of damage depending on the blade combos you pulled off earlier, and the blades you use in the chain attack. And now, what would a role-playing game be without role-playing? It'd be Final Fantasy 15, but that's a topic for a different time. The way Xenoblade 2 handles role-playing elements is what can only be really described as its own version of class customization. On top of giving you a set of abilities and an element, blades can also have passive effects on your stats. One might boost your HP, while another might boost your strength. With each driver, you want to create builds that can play off another driver well, or else you're gonna have a bad time. On top of your party members having their own progression systems, the blades have their own progression systems that advance and expand under certain conditions. Many of them just require that you build trust with them, but others might require you to finish a quest line, or even go on a mercenary mission, sometimes a specific mercenary mission. Your party member's progression works with points, allowing you to invest them into whichever stats you want. Naturally, you can also equip accessories on both your driver and your blades, boasting an assortment of stat boosts. It's slightly annoying that you have to refine these accessories at shops, but they're found everywhere, so I'll let it slide. For weapons, you have chips that you don't have to refine and can use right then and there. Besides increasing attack power, they also have various effects like 50% more damage against airborne enemies. The game does have a few moments where the grind is real, but the gameplay loop was so much fun for me that I didn't really mind it. I said before that the game is huge, and it is. The game isn't necessarily an open world game though, but rather it has several worlds akin to Kingdom Hearts, each of them bustling with things to do and places to be. They also have their own economies that you can bolster by being a patron at the local shops. It's worth mentioning that you can interact with specific parts of the environment to extract loot or bring yourself to other areas. It's an interesting concept, but it tends to make things annoying because I find myself having to equip and unequip blades to make this even feasible. Granted, you can progress your blades into reaching a high enough level for those specific parameters. Now, there's something in this game that has been a topic of heated debate amongst gamers, and I'd like to discuss that. Yes, we're talking about the blade designs. Now, this is going to upset a lot of people, but here goes. I love them. Xenoblade 2 features an all-you-can-eat waifu buffet, and I would not have it any other way. Some have complained about how distracting they are, and I hear them. I was pretty distracted too. It's a good kind of distracted though. Look, I've never been one to say no to eye candy, so this gets a thumbs up from me. And if you don't like that I like it, you can kiss the darkest part of my white ass. If you're not a fan of fan service, I'd recommend staying away from this game. I've mentioned a couple problems that I have with the game, but I've not quite covered all of them. For starters, finding your way from point A to point B can be easier said than done. You're given a quest marker, but finding your way to the goal can be a nightmare if you don't have a keen eye. From time to time, the game will slow to a snail's pace when there really isn't that much going on. It's a bit charming in a way though. It shows that the developers did everything they possibly could, given the Switch's limitations. And your mileage may vary on the pacing of Chapter 7. Personally, I thought the Spirit Crucible Elpis lasted for far too long. Story-wise, the pacing is alright, but the actual dungeon itself felt like it was going on and on and on. I was getting tired of looking at the same terrain. The game has a lot of blades, many of whom are retrieved through resonating with core crystals. There are legendary core crystals, rare core crystals, and common core crystals. And all of these things amount to one thing: RNG. You could go through 20 legendary core crystals before finding a rare blade. That shit is beyond frustrating. Admittedly though, it kind of adds to the giddiness of finding a blade you know you are going to really want. Fuck yeah, Telos! But the little issues alone cannot break an ultimately superlative game. What Xenoblade 2 lacks in polish, it more than makes up for in scope and depth. I am mad at myself for shelving this game as long as I did. Shame on you, 2017, Wayne. Shame. This is my favorite Nintendo Switch game, and next to such exemplars as Octopath Traveler, Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, and Smash Bros. Ultimate, that is saying something. Seeing as how this game, as well as its DLC expansion, which I bought by the way, sold pretty well, I have no doubts Monolith is cooking up something else for their JRPG lineup, and I look forward to it. This came after recording, but Monolith announced in a Nintendo Direct that they will be remastering the original Xenoblade on Switch. I am definitely going to play that. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like what you saw, there's more where that came from. This is Wayne the Crimson Eye, over and out.